From the spring of 1804 to the late summer of 1806, Lewis and Clark greatly influenced the United States by discovering the lands west of the Mississippi River to find better land and forever change our country.
You could say that Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were some of the most important explorers in the history of the United States. If you don't know, in 1804, President Thomas Jefferson asked his friend Lewis to complete arguably the wildest adventure known to man of discovering what comes to be the United States Louisiana Purchase. Of course, since Lewis was asked to be exploring this new land, he didn't want to be alone. In light of this, he chose William Clark to be his teammate. So the journey began in May 1804, and they traveled off with York, Clark's slave, and Lewis's trustworthy Newfoundland dog. Thomas Jefferson understood this was a very dangerous journey, so he gave them a bunch of different supplies, including clothing for both winter and summer, informative books, camping and medical supplies, and surveying instruments like a compass and weapons. He also gave gifts like knives, tobacco, beads, mirrors, face paint, medicine, and bright colored cloth for the Native Americans. He demonstrated that peace will always beat fighting and quarrels through the planning of a successful journey.
The Native Americans were very intrigued when they saw white people, and sometimes even scared of them. Since some of the people in the Native American tribes didn't understand English, they would use hand signals, or even try to pick up on some of the tribe's language. The more common way Lewis and Clark communicated, however, was by displaying peace, through gifts, as Jefferson had told them to do. This would come to be a theme as they were met with more and more Native American tribes throughout their journey. Some of the Native Americans became good friends with Lewis and Clark, and even agreed to join them on their expedition. Lewis and Clark had mostly good interactions with the natives, but some of them weren't so great. Since the tribes are from different parts of the country, and have different beliefs, they all had different ideas with the white men. One of the first Native American tribes to get in a bit of a squabble with the Corps of Discovery was the Teton Sioux in late September of 1804. After Lewis and Clark gave them gifts as a sign of peace, they were thankful and gave the Corps of Discovery some gifts back. However, when Lewis and Clark stayed around the Sioux Indians a bit longer, they began to get cautious and demanded more gifts, and even started making threats like taking their 55-foot keelboat that they had had all throughout their journey down the Mississippi River. At this point, Lewis and the Corps of Discovery knew they had to move on from the Sioux Indians and continue on with their journey.
Their next stop would come in North Dakota at Fort Mandan in early November. Unlike the Teton Sioux, the Mandan Indians were very respectful and welcoming. With winter coming, the Corps of Discovery needed a place to stay, and they felt like they could trust the Mandans. The Mandans also trusted them. They helped them build their own fort, Fort Mandan, where they lived for 9 months. This also taught them how to make canoes, ropes, and moccasins. While all these things are helpful, the most helpful thing they found at Fort Mandan was Sacagawea. Sacagawea would later go on to follow Lewis and Clark for the rest of their journey and help them communicate with the Native Americans. The Corps of Discovery had all heard of the Shoshone Indians and knew they were a powerful and respected tribe. They figured that Sacagawea could help them communicate with the Shoshone Indians because he had past experiences with them. They finally met with the Shoshone Indians in Montana near the Continental Divide, and with Sacagawea's help, they purchased horses. Now, even though it was April in the year 1805, it was one of the toughest, coldest stretches of the Corps of Discovery's journey. They were low on food and trying to reach the Pacific Ocean day after day, but they finally found another tribe, the Nez Perce, who helped feed them and gave them necessary materials to help them recover from their weariness for a short 11 days. This is why communicating peace in times of distress was so important for Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery. Without their help, they would either have gone nuts or froze to death. After feeling rejuvenated and giving the Nez Perce their horses in exchange for their kindness, they finished the rest of their journey and finally reached the Pacific Ocean.
They had completed an ultimate adventure on November of 1805, when they finally made it to Fort Clatsop, where they had an agonizing and long winter. They were sickly and weak, but toward the end of March in 1806, the crews started heading back for the Atlantic Ocean, which was another 8,000-mile-long journey. Fortunately for the Corps of Discovery, the adventure back home was much easier than the way there. On the way back, they saw the Nez Perce and picked up their horses, traveled through what's known today as Yellowstone National Park, dropped off Sacagawea back at her home, took notes in their journals for Thomas Jefferson, and thanked many of the Native American tribes that they had previously seen along the way. With the water current moving in their favor, the Corps of Discovery had reached the starting point of their discovery, which was St. Louis, on September 23 of 1806. Without communicating peace with the Native Americans, Lewis and Clark never would have accomplished what they did, and America may have looked a lot differently.